Welcome to the MemberWise Best Practice series. This video is brought to you today by the MemberWise Network, the leading free-to-join best practice network for membership and association professionals. We hope that you enjoy this great presentation, and for further information about our growing network, please visit www.memberwise.org.uk.
It's great to be back today. Haven't been here for a few years, so looking forward to speaking. Slightly disappointed to find that Richard will have video and photography. I think I'd have had my hair done if I'd have realised, but never mind. It's slightly odd for me to be presenting at this time in the morning. Normally I get the pre-lunchtime slot when my speaking is accompanied by the low rumble of hungry stomachs, or the immediately after lunch slot where it's accompanied by the rather louder rumbling of snoring. So I'm hoping that everyone's bright and breezy today. What I'd like to talk about today are two challenges that I see that are facing membership organizations are facing. I've been working in the membership sector now for about 15 years and have seen lots of developments along the way. I think when I first started working there, it was all about membership systems and paper-based transactions. It became much more then about digital transactions and how we can improve admin flow and member service. I think we're now entering a new stage when organizations will become increasingly digital, but as the topic and subject of today's event is about, it will be about the blending of digital with other engagement. And I think the challenge that presents to organizations is twofold. One, it is the way we present systems to people and the way we allow our members to engage. And secondly, about the way we organize our organization, the way we behave in order to facilitate that properly and to grow and become proper digital organizations. So the first challenge, I think, is this, which is for many, many years, going back since the dawn of the membership organization, which I guess was a couple of centuries ago, we have been predominantly focused on unidirectional conversation. So us talking out to our members. Now that's not solely, but it is the primary way we've communicated. There's been some bidirectional communication in there, so we've said things back and we've shaped the organization. But increasingly now, members, stakeholders, the general public are looking for omnidirectional communication, omnidirectional and omni-channel. The membership organizations I'm part of, if I see something that they're talking about that I don't agree with, I want to go back and say I don't necessarily agree with that. In fact, more than that, I want to talk to my peers and identify new peers who agree with me so that we can together work together and perhaps lobby and change the view of the overall organization as a whole, or if not change it, at least have our views represented and shared. I think if you look at the success in the outside of the membership organizations, in terms of the large, successful digital organizations, they have succeeded because of this. And I don't want to go into the Facebooks, the LinkedIns, the Google Plus, but it is the omnidirectional opportunities it offers people that make the difference there, I believe. So that's the first challenge. The second one is how we work as organizations to deliver change and to adapt to what our members are asking for. And a lot of my thinking here has come from working with government. So over the last 2 or 3 years at Indigo Blue, my company has spent a lot of time working in central government. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there is a strategy within government at the moment, which is digital by default, which is the primary mechanism for the delivery of services from government to the wider populace is by digital. And I'm sure you've already seen a lot of these services emerging. So tax disc online, paying your tax online. Increasingly, there are huge projects going on around universal credit. We're doing a lot of work with ONS at the moment on how they will run their census this year. So the last census 10 years ago, surprisingly, not much of it happened on the web. This time, most of it will happen on the web. What is interesting in government at the moment is that they have recognized that actually just digitizing the services they already provided is not the answer. It's a good start, but actually they're now moving into a new phase. And that new phase is about using digital as a facilitator for changing interactions, changing communications, and changing engagement. You cannot deliver all government services using digital. If you're a policeman, you can't arrest somebody digitally and remotely, but you can use digital to improve the process as you go along. So, for instance, we've been working with the Metropolitan Police, who have built a system for crime scene reporting. And when they first thought about this system, it was all about replacing exactly the same system that they had before, which was writing notes on a pad of paper. But as they started to think more digital and be more digital as an organization, they realized that actually there are all sorts of things you can do. If you had an iPad when you're sat in a crime scene, you can take photographs rather than describe it. You can record conversations with witnesses. You can completely change the way the dialogue works and improve it for the better. As a result, the government is now going through quite a significant change in terms of driving digital behavior and trying to change the organization. And fundamentally, it is this. It is that digital is not about systems. It is about the way we communicate, collaborate, engage, and work. And this is a combination of culture, it's a combination of governance, it's about how we control spending, it's about the way we think about the organization. It is about the way we measure our success and make decisions along the way. It's about the process we put in place, and then it's about the way we engage internally and externally. This model I have here comes from Gartner, the leading IT industry analysts, and they talk about modern digital organizations and organizations that are in a position to transform. And these are the 5 elements they talk about. So they're the 2 challenges: engagement and organizational change. And I'm going to try and illustrate these today through one main case study and a few smaller ones. And the case study I have is Hive. Now, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with Hive, but Hive is, as it says here, the professional network for creative people. It is an online collaboration platform. It provides what we call swarms, which is community groups, self-created community groups to allow people to collaborate. It provides online training. It provides trainee finder, provides recruitment. It creates a platform for research because it has a number of people one can ask questions for. Then it has some fun things in it. It provides what one would expect to see in a standard membership organization, and it also has an awful lot of the things that one would expect to see in an online community platform. Hive was built by Creative Skill Set, and Creative Skill Set are the sector skills council for the creative industry. They are, to all intents and purposes, a membership organization, and it came in from a result of some work done a number of years ago about collaboration. So Indigo Blue was engaged to look at their CRM because they felt their CRM and their membership system wasn't working for them. And we looked at it and we found a problem that I'm sure that you'll all be familiar with, which is they had about 200 people on this membership database, this CRM system, for whom they had or needed to have a really deep engagement level. So they would be people in Parliament, they would be leaders in their sector. They included the Prime Minister, interestingly enough. And of course, what happens is when the chief exec goes out, when salesmen go out and meet these people, they need to record the quality of the dialogue. They need to keep it so that when people go out in future and meet these people, there is a history of the discussion and people don't look like fools when they go out and see them again. So they have the great and the good, as we call them. You then have important employers who you want to have a similar relationship with because they're important to engaging with your membership, sponsorship, selling services to, encouraging their employees to join and become members of you. And again, there was about 1,000 people there. And then there was another 20,000 who were just, and I say just in the loosest possible sense here, but they were people who were members, people who you communicated to on a completely different level. You weren't going to go out and send personal emails to them. You weren't going to be going out and meeting them on a daily basis and discussing the future of the organization, a much lighter touch engagement. And what we realized was that we needed to separate off the great and the good and create a a mechanism for managing them, which is CRM. But we needed to split off the rest, and we needed to create a mechanism for much better engagement, much more improved engagement. And what we found as well was that in that group, as well as us wanting to engage better with them, that they wanted to engage with each other. So professionals wanted to engage with employers, employers wanted to engage with the students, students wanted to engage with the training partners and employers, an omnidirectional conversation. And out of that, the idea of Hive was born. Hive has been hugely successful. I don't think as a single answer it'll be right for everyone, but I hope as I go through this, it'll whet people's appetites as to what they can do and how they can make it successful. What I'm going to do now is go through the Hive case study, but in that context of how they went about it in terms of organizational change, as well as delivery of this system. And the first step, unsurprisingly, is start with a simple strategy. In the Hive context, the strategy was exactly the one that I've just articulated, which is we need to be able to create an opportunity for people to engage directly with each other. But we want to own that dialogue, be part of it, and drive it. We don't want it to go off elsewhere. We want to be part of it. We don't know exactly how that will work. We have some ideas, but we're not going to dig right into the detail at the starting point. We start with a simple, high-level strategy, something that people can understand and buy into. And the key thing about starting with a simple strategy is that it is the critical part of getting cultural change in your organization and buy-in. This comment came from Mark O'Neill, who was formerly of the Government Digital Services, the organization that was part of the Cabinet Office that was responsible for driving digital change in government. And he said the strategy was the most successful part of achieving cultural change, fundamentally. And it's not just government. The organizations I've worked with where they've had greatest success, probably the Association of Accounting Technicians, where they had great leadership in Jane Scott Paul and a simple strategy, which is we need to digitize our services, we need to improve our engagement, and we need to provide better services to our centers. Similarly, the YHA, where we've worked with Caroline White, who again is a great leader, their strategy was simply, we need to put our customers first, we need to engage with them, and they need to feel part of our organization. Starting with a simple strategy. I've mentioned this already, but simplicity is the key thing. You don't need all of the answers on day one, and this is absolutely critical. The thing that slows most organizations down that I've worked with is a desire to try and answer all the questions before they start. In terms of improving engagement and whether we can use online collaboration, whether we can use something like meetup groups, whether we can create a new way of delivering conferences, be that online or blended. The thing that stops people going out and doing this is the fact they go, we're not sure if that will work. How exactly will it work? And going out, researching it to death, analyzing it to death, and never actually getting to a point where they can start. You don't need all the answers in a strategy, and what you need to do is recognize that you can do small things, you can learn from them, and you can see it as learning. Even if it goes wrong, it is not failure. This requires a change in the way you think about governance, and I think this is a big change that we're starting to see in organizations. Outside of the membership space, we've done a lot of work with retail banks at the moment who are really struggling with the problem of digital innovation, to the extent that quite a few of them are setting up different departments in order to do this. And the biggest challenge they have is that they've always seen learning and changing direction as failure, and they have to get to a point where they can invest a small amount, try it. If it doesn't work, try something else. And that requires changes in culture, but it requires changes in governance. In order to support that, you need an incremental process. Now, I would imagine that most of you now have incremental processes for delivery of new systems. So you will be using probably agile-type methodologies for delivery. But actually, you need to take a step up. You need to be in a position where you're investing incrementally at an organizational level. and then delivering incrementally. If you're going to start with a simple strategy and grow, then incremental delivery is essential because it allows you to manage risk. It allows you to ensure that each step is managed and controlled. It means that if you learn and you need to change direction, that the cost of that change of direction remains low. Fundamentally, you want to make the cost of change lower than the cost of doing vast amounts of analysis up front. I come from a background, Indigo Blue specialized in incremental delivery. I think this is fundamental in today's world. We don't know the answers up front. What will work for one organization won't work for another. We need to try things out. We need to get things in front of members, see how members react and change. It's so important. I'm going to go into a case study. I'll drop back into creative skill set in a minute, but this one I think illustrates the point slightly better. And this is the Institution of Chemical Engineers. So I've worked with them for about 5 or 6 years now, probably longer actually, probably about 10 years. Time flies by. And I guess like many people here, iChemE has a chartered application process, which is incredibly complex. It used to be completely paper-based and used to take up to a year to complete. Someone would submit a really thick application form with all sorts of associated information. It would go into a review, and then based on that review, it would drop into a work cycle. So it could require a technical submission to prove their technical capability. It could require a technical interview. It could require a career interview. It could require references. Hugely complex process, and each of it paper-based, going out to fellows to do part of it, and the reviews and the interviews. Hugely complex process. So iChemE decided this was a prime example of something that could be automated, an online digital workflow that people could engage with directly. It would provide visibility of the processes you went through, so an applicant would know exactly where they were. It would make it easy for fellows to engage in the process, and it would make the whole process much easier to manage from the institution's perspective. So they came about it from an incremental perspective. They started off by saying, actually, we've got hundreds of these workflows. We're not going to try and specify them all. We will just build one. We'll build the one that has the highest value, and that's get chartered. And they built it, and it was successful. But actually, going forward, they started to become more incremental. And looking back, we could have done this completely differently. And we could have done it differently to drive a lot more value a lot quicker. And I think this is something that we can all take away and learn from, which is simple. On day one, you don't have to build the whole process. You can build two parts of it in the iChemE's perspective. Submit application, review, and either it drops through for approval or it goes back into the paper-based process. If you start off by building that, immediately, after a very small amount of development, you have 50% of the cases dealt with straight away. Straight through the system, extremely fast, removes an awful lot of admin effort internally. It's much better for the member. The member can be engaged in that process, and 50% of them are cleared straight away. You can go live with that. You can then build the next bit, which is the next 25%, which is the one where you need to take references. You build that into the system. In terms of engagement, the references you can communicate with via email, and where there's an interview with the references, you can do that via Skype or webinar, and that can be done remotely by fellows, and the fellows can manage it themselves. So in terms of this omnidirectional type behavior, you're immediately delegating responsibility for the fellows, but you're making it easier for them to engage with it. So you're improving the process. You then take the next step, which is technical submission, build that in, and then finally you finish. 5, 6 steps, each incremental, each a low level of investment, each try, learn, try, build, learn from it. And each time you get better at building it, every time the quality is higher, and each time you build it, you get a better engagement with your members and give value back to your members, saving time. The return on investment is much bigger and the risk is much lower. So this was iChemE. In the context of Hive, I think this was quite interesting because Hive started off with an idea that they did not know would work. They wanted to build some sort of online community. They wanted to engage with members. And one of the ideas they had was that they wanted to do online mentoring. So if you're a student and a professional, they could get together and they could provide mentoring through your career. I think lots of people have thought about this. It sounds like a great idea. So they built it, they tested it, and they learned. And what did they learn? They learned that that didn't work. Yeah, they learned it didn't work. So they stopped and they started again, but they changed direction. And I think this is a sign of a really mature organization. It is very difficult to learn and stop. Yeah? It's not just organizationally, it's individually. I'm a great person for setting off in one direction, and despite any evidence to the contrary, I will keep going until I'm absolutely convinced it's wrong. In my private life, I do this all the time, hiking. A few years ago, I was walking down the Thames on a hike. I walked for 5 miles thinking, why is the Thames flowing in the wrong direction? Yeah, it's amazing how many ideas you can come up with as to why the Thames is flowing in the wrong direction before you actually realize it's you that's walking in the wrong direction and you've been doing it for 5 hours. Yeah, we are not very good at stopping, and it's part of organizational behavior that needs to change, and our governance needs to respond to that. So it's important that at a senior level, as part of your governance process, you are prepared to accept that learning is a good thing and changing direction is a good thing. In the context of creative skill set, we took what we'd learned, we used some of the components that we'd built, and we re-implemented them. But it does take a lot of maturity. And what it really requires is us to trust the empirical evidence. I have to trust the fact that the Thames is actually going the right way, because it usually does, and therefore it's me that's wrong. If I go out and do user research, and this is a very big thing in government, I can understand what members really want. I can understand that they don't want a mentoring system, or it's not going to work for them, and therefore we'll do something else. I have a great example. One of the institutions I was working with, I was sat at an IT steering meeting, and the chief exec said, I don't want to use HTML emails anymore. I never use them. And there was a big debate about the value of HTML emails against plain text emails until the head of marketing said, the open rate on HTML emails is 32%, ones on text base is 5%. End of debate. We have to do user research. We have to trust the empirical evidence we get from that. If those things are about cultural change, as I mentioned before, it's strategy. It's about thinking about incremental delivery and allowing funding to support incremental delivery. It is about learning and being prepared to change. The other thing I want to talk about that I think was exceptionally well done at Creative Skill Set, and I think is a lesson for everyone, and coming back to the main topic of the event today, is that Creative Skill Set didn't just say, right, here you are, here's this fantastic tool to their network, go and use it. They started to focus on areas where they knew there was high engagement and built from there. And I think there's a lesson here. If you look at Facebook, Facebook on day one didn't just throw this tool out to the world. They went to the Harvard alumni and said, here is a product for you to use. They knew that group of people well. They encouraged them to use it, and they built up a user base. And that user base then was viral to other universities and then out to the wider world. In the context of Creative Skill Set, they started off with some highly engaged employers. So the BBC, Channel 4, ITV, some of the big universities, places where people wanted to be engaged with. And they went to some of their high-level user groups, special interest groups in film, in music, who were extremely highly engaged with the organization, and they gave the tool to them first, and they worked with them to use that tool. And they recognized that the tool wasn't all, because people would still want to meet on a regular basis together, and they facilitated those meetings. So very quickly, they built a bedrock, a foundation of highly engaged users who became the foundation of the product going forward. So as other people came in, there was already information and data there. And I think this is something we can all repeat. Even if we don't want to build a full dance, all singing, all dancing community platform, we may want to pick off small areas. But the way to do it is to get your engaged members first and get them using. That was Hive. Hive was launched last year. It now has 80,000 members on it, 1,000 companies. It is free to use, which is probably a topic for another day. Yeah. I think at the moment we'd all shy away from making our membership free, but there is an interesting question there. It is funded through sponsorship, it's funded through recruitment, it's funded through courses. What is fascinating from my perspective about Creative Skill Set is they had to a great extent solve this direction of collaboration. They now have a group of people who are collaborating with each other. It is within the confines, shall I say, of the Creative Skill Set. It is visible to the Creative Skill Set, and Creative Skill Set can add value to that conversation. But as a result, the members feel much more engaged. It is a much, much deeper relationship, and it will be more enduring, I'm sure. Although I'll come back in a few years' time and you can challenge me on that. As I've said before, it might not be the answer to everyone, but for everyone here, but I think there are things one can take away, and I hope. The other critical thing that they have done is created an organization that supports digital change. So they are now evolving all the time and adding features and supporting members in different ways. They've created a much more dynamic digital organization. I think the critical parts of that are this approach to governance. It took a huge level of maturity for them to say, we are going in the wrong direction, we need to change. But having done that on something large, it is much easier to do it on small things, and they are prepared to make small investments, small innovations, try them out. If they fail, move on to something else. Not count it as failure, count it as learning. I've heard people talk about this idea of fail fast. I think it's so negative. It's about learn fast. The other thing that they have got absolutely right is the blending of offline and online engagement. They built up this community platform by using the links they had in the offline world. In the real world, one might call it, in the offline world. Okay, where to start? I don't think what I've said is, I don't think you can take away everything and say, right, we're going to build a whole platform tomorrow. I don't think it's relevant for most organizations, but I hope there are parts of it that are. I think what is relevant is the need to change the way your organization works. How do you start? Start with a simple strategy. Yeah, that is the thing that drives cultural change. It is the thing that underpins all your change. You need to get a commitment to incremental investment and incremental process. And finally, supporting all of those things. Start simple. Don't try and boil the ocean on one day. Start, try things out. Get in front of your users and find out if they like them. If they don't, start again. If they do, build on top of that. Thank you.